very warm welcome to this session. I've been really quite excited to be delivering this community-based marketing session for some time now. Pleased to be joined by Michelle Goodall from Guild, who I've been doing heaps of work with, and it's really quite exciting, the Guild platform. If you haven't been on, Michelle will be telling you all about it, so you will get that opportunity. I've worked my entire life in business, building networks, building membership groups, and then this kind of new community-based word has come about. And I think it's really, really exciting that this now can be part of the marketing funnel. And Michelle's going to talk us a bit more around that and how you can consider your own customers as your community and take that to your advantage. So I'm going to be really quiet because I can't wait to hear what Michelle has to say. Michelle, over to you.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. Can I have you as my hype woman everywhere that I go? Because you make me feel so good before presentations. Thank you very much indeed. So I'm talking today about community-based marketing, CBM. It's the new frontier in marketing, not just for organizations such as yours, but actually for many organizations and specifically in B2B. So I'll cover today why is community hot right now? Because it's been around for a very long time. What are the macro kind of levers there? How does community differ from social media? Actually, what is CBM or community-based marketing? Importantly, anything that we do in marketing, there has to be a business case behind it. So what is the business case for community in organizations? And then some tips around building and sustaining online communities, very condensed given the time that we've got today, but the formula for community success, some top tips there. And I could talk to you for community for hours, but I'm going to try and put this all into about 35 minutes today. So Lisa, you're a brilliant hype woman. She's explained a lot of this already. I'm Michelle Goodall. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Guild. If you're not on there already, it's a mobile-first platform purpose-built for groups, networks, and communities. And I have 25 years experience in marketing and communications and community as well. Now, I've not always been in-house. As a consultant, I develop marketing, community, and comms strategies and work with lots of B2B and B2C brands in the UK and also globally as well. In terms of community and bringing that into my offer, I started off on web forums in the early 1990s and helped to grow e-consultancies, 6,000 member strong marketing professional community, which is actually interestingly now on Guild. In terms of other communities, I created pre-metaverse virtual worlds and very early social media communities for B2B and consumer brands, such as RS Components, Shure, Penguin Random House, Coca-Cola, Dove, lots of charities, V&A, and also non-profit and governmental organisations as well. Now, I like to try and be as generous as I can with my experience around community specifically. So I blog quite a lot on the Guild blog, and also I try and create really helpful and useful models, such as the periodic table of community strategy. And there's a link on here, and it's really a community strategy on a page guide. So everything you need to think about community if you're starting off new and fresh to this world. So I'd like to cover the basics quite quickly. And the first thing that I'm going to say is, what's an online community? Well, an online community is quite simply, a social unit or a group of people who share something in common. Now, whether that's an identity, whether it's values, whether it's a location, whether it's a shared goal or shared roles, or even interests. And communities share a sense of place. Now, that might be a geographical area, or it might even be a virtual or a digital platform. Online communities are groups of people who share something in common, but also share a digital platform where they gather and they communicate. Now, those digital community platforms can include Guild, but things like Discord or Insided or Choros. And those communities can either be discoverable and wide and public to a wide set of members. On the Guild platform, an example would be the Comms Heroes community. Or they can be private and non-discoverable and much more niche. So an example would be Manchester Metropolitan University. They have a community for its alumni and its digital marketing students. Those people have been in that area of study. But communities can also be these. They can be consumer and niche interest communities on platforms like Reddit and also Discord as well. I particularly like this one, Puffcord, a cannabis community for medical patients and adults, which is on Discord. And for those fans out there of Love Island, you'll have seen actually during ITV's presentation, there was a sponsorship from Reddit as well. But I'm going to mainly be talking about professional communities today. And actually, broadly, there are 8 different types of professional community in B2B. And what you choose as your community will be based on the objectives of you as an individual or an organization who's setting them up. The first is customer support or service. And these are often help forums where the objective is to create efficiencies, to save money, to help people self-serve, for example. The next are concierge communities. I love these. These are high-touch client service spaces where your key clients can be super served. And your objective normally is customer retention. So we work with people like Salesforce and Deloitte on those. And then thought leadership communities. There's a lot of these. These are communities of expertise in a specific area. For example, behavioral science in marketing, or communities for e-commerce marketers. The objectives of these are often lead generation, brand building, brand salience. The next are value add communities, and these might add value to a subscription, a membership or a training. And often these kind of communities' objectives are member retention or renewal, customer satisfaction, maybe product differentiation. The next up are executive peer groups. Now, these might be created for senior leaders in an industry where they want to access each other, where they want to be seen to influence something. It might be for networking or connections. And these usually are quite small, high-value peer groups like advisory communities. And the objectives organisationally here are influence, access, maybe faster decision-making. Then we've got sponsored communities, and these are usually created by media or event brands or publishers, and they'll be monetized by sponsorship. So the objectives there are either new or incremental revenue. Paid communities, there are quite a few of these on Guild. Members pay to belong to the community. For example, there's a community on Guild called Fix, and that's for digital advertising, e-commerce and media specialists. And the objectives here from the person running it, Simon Andrews, is actually revenue and retained revenue and recurring revenue as well. And then finally, we have peer-to-peer communities. Now, often there's no direct marketing or commercial agenda, and these communities are self-organizing, and they might be quite informal as well. And the objectives here are often mutual support, self-help, networking, those kind of things. So that's what is online community and what is community, and the 8 different types of B2B community. Let's talk about why community is so hot right now, because it's been around since the dawn of time, and online communities certainly have been around since the 1970s. So one of the biggest levers really is the pandemic. The biggest societal and technical changes often happen in times of crisis, and the internet was born actually from the Cold War. So that was a time of crisis around communications. During the pandemic, digital transformation accelerated. I'm sure it did in your organization as well. And as individuals, regardless of where we worked and what our jobs were, we actually increasingly sought meaningful connections with others, as we were all feeling quite isolated. So whether that was in our local communities, our work communities, or just those communities that served our interests or made us laugh or just kept us sane and made us feel human. So the pandemic is a really big macro influencer of this trend. Another trend is the trend in trust being in decline amongst institutions, government and media. Now, Edelman's Trust Barometer has been going for 20 years. It's a global tracker that looks at who we trust as individuals. And what they're seeing, particularly over the last 5 and 10 years, is that increasingly we are trusting people like us, or people that we perceive to be our peers, much more than institutions, government and media. And actually, community is another one of those spaces where people like us or people like me hang out. And so, again, that's a big lever. Another big lever is money. Show me the money. Tech businesses are way ahead of most in community strategy. And the big technology companies have been on a buying spree for the last 7 or 8 years, buying ready-made communities and engaged audiences. And the reason for doing this is that they're just bringing customers into their sales funnel, customers that they might not have already. And these customers are an untapped revenue generation stream. But also, when you start to reach people through these communities, it increases brand advocacy as well. So there's some examples on here. Bevy, for example, an events technology acquiring CMX, Stripe acquiring Indie Hackers, for example, a community for entrepreneurs. So technology businesses have been, seeing this trend ahead of everybody else. And the final macro factor as to why communities are hot right now is the increasing cost of marketing. And I'm sure that you're seeing this as well. So this term, community-based marketing, which I will define shortly, is a term that Guild founder Ashley Friedline and myself coined in 2020. It's gaining momentum as a marketing concept, similarly to account-based marketing or ABM, because it's a new play in marketing that is delivering results against a time where other channels, digital channels, have become more costly, much more saturated, and definitely more noisy as well. So marketers are exploring building communities in CBM as ways of delivering lower cost of customer acquisition, and also increasing the lifetime value of their customers via community-based marketing. So some more basics here. A lot of people say, well, community is social media, but actually the two are similar, but a little bit different. So I'm going to tell you the difference as I see it between community and also social media. Now, community platforms, as I've said, have been around since the early 1970s. And actually what you can see here is a model I put together to kind of track the different communities that have been in being since the 1970s and then through to the early 2020s. And the rise of social networks such as MySpace, LinkedIn and Facebook in the early 2000s meant that the idea of online or digital communities suddenly became attractive and also accessible to many organizations and brands. They were able to create brand communities and engage with large groups of fans and followers in things like Facebook, LinkedIn, MySpace, Orkut, Bebo. Remember some of these. But social media platforms are ad-funded businesses. They make their money through advertising, and providing software for community for free just doesn't make them money, and it doesn't make shareholders happy. Now, I love social media. I love TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. And I've built my career on figuring out how these platforms work and helping others. They've allowed me to build my professional brand, to build my profile, and I've got great professional contacts and networks because of them. But LinkedIn and Twitter are just that. They are social networks and they are ad funded. They're not community platforms. And they don't allow people, you as marketers, to build proper communities that are moderated, that are private, that have high quality discussions and discourse and debate. One of the key factors is that the data is theirs and not yours. You might spend years trying to develop a community on social media, but actually they can just switch it off tomorrow. And you can't control things in those communities like reward systems for engaged community members, gamification, and lots of other things that we use as community specialists to build our communities that you can with community platforms. Now, social networks business models are ad funded, as I say, and LinkedIn used to allow people to build communities on LinkedIn groups. Now, they no longer support that particular area of their business, and the moderation features are pretty terrible. And actually, I don't know how many LinkedIn groups that you're in, but certainly the ones that I see and people, move their Guild group over to Guild as a result are either full of spam posts or they've been abandoned by their hosts and also their members. And I think the other thing about LinkedIn, I love LinkedIn, but its business model is also to sell salespeople, Sales Navigator, which allows them to reach out to prospects. Now, as a CMO, I would say I get an average of 20 to 30 unsolicited LinkedIn connections and what I would call business development spam a day, like these examples. It's actually a bigger problem for me than sales emails. In fact, a sales email is much more likely to be read than me by me than the spam that I get in through LinkedIn. And it's not just me who's grumpy about this. Actually, research by Censuswide in 2020 stated that 28% of LinkedIn users feel that it's full of spam. And this is actually a growing issue for LinkedIn. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do about it. So let's talk about the business case for marketers who want to invest in community-based marketing and community-based growth. And let's define this CBM for you as well. Now, there are people who've worked in community for 25 years plus, and I would say a lot of them are community purists. They're not really happy that marketers are getting excited about community, and they suggest that community isn't part of marketing. Well, actually, I'd say that I'm not a purist. I'm actually more of a realist. And I believe that marketing-led organizations, insight is embedded in all parts of a business. And good marketing relies on customer insight, prospect insight, customer proximity, and prospect proximity. Now, the CIM's definition of marketing is the management process responsible for identifying, anticipating, and satisfying customer requirements profitably. Now, the definition of community-based marketing is essentially this. It brings professionals closer together around a shared practice or area of expertise to create closer and more valuable relationships with your prospects and also your customers. Now, there's a guide here if you want to go and have a look at further reading around community-based marketing. It's a non-firewalled PDF, so please go and have a look at that particular link. Some people call community-based marketing community-led growth, but really the two kind of terms can be used interchangeably, and there are lots of organizations that call themselves community-led, and there are lots of marketers who are using the CBM moniker. I'm going to try and simplify a little bit about how community-based marketing works by applying it to a very simple marketing and sales funnel. Now, in B2B and B2B marketing, relationships are typically significantly lower in volume, but much higher in value. And so it follows that communities in B2B will definitely be much smaller, maybe much more niche, and also deeper than the mega communities that you see for B2C brands like Adidas or Peloton, for example. And at the top of the awareness end of the marketing funnel, you're going to have typically publicly accessible campaigns and content. In B2B, these will definitely be aimed towards a B2B audience and amplified with paid media, social media ads on LinkedIn, Twitter, outreach, online PR, etc. And you want this awareness building activity to turn interest from potential customers who then you can qualify using lead scoring, and you might put them into prospects of valuing various potential and also influence. Now, the interest, consideration and desire stages of the marketing funnel are perfectly suited to community-based marketing and community building. Now, you might actually have prospect or customer groups that might be in the tens, the hundreds, or possibly the thousands. And at this size, you might have communities that are broken up by topic or interest area or geography or even seniority as well. But you'll want your communities to be big enough to have natural momentum, but also not so big as they become too noisy. And then you're just recreating the feed in LinkedIn. Now, in your communities, you create interesting discussions, you prompt people with different content, you align it to your comms, your events, your marketing activity, and you engage with your prospects who already have shown an interest in what you offer, in fact, enough to join your community. And you help them build their own conviction that you've got the expertise, you've got the authority, the credibility and the reputation in your market to be a very good choice as a supplier to them when the time is right. So what's interesting is that community is a bit like brand building. It's a long-term play, but it can be hugely valuable. And actually, community is really good in the loyalty and the advocacy element of the marketing funnel as well. So sales and marketing is often focused on customer acquisition, but much of the value in the profit, particularly in B2B and professional services, etc., comes from having loyal, repeat customers. Now, community-based marketing can be used to increase loyalty and customer advocacy. And so it's really important to consider this also in terms of customer advocacy leading to referrals, and also the impact that this is going to have on client retention. Now, we get to work with loads of marketers at Guild, and this slide summarises the main reasons why B2B organisations are investing in community. Well, firstly, they help uncover customer and market insights, which are really important in terms of our proposition and also how we meet those prospects as well. They're much less noisy than other digital channels, and they can help you get much better cut through with your prospects and your clients. They generate sales leads, and I'm going to give you some examples of this in a few more slides. There are Guild community owners like corporate digital comms specialist Bowen Craggs, who are reporting the actual value of leads and sales from their community on Guild. They drive mental availability and also awareness, and do this on a regular basis, so you can have multiple touch points throughout the year. They improve conversion rates. In fact, one Guild client has reported that their community has increased their prospect conversion rates by 50%. They help with client retention and upsell and loyalty, and also they are scalable customer service channels as well. Now, CBM, community-based marketing, like ABM or account-based marketing, seems to have found a home within B2B marketers. And the problems that it solves are that it's hard to reach potential customers. I know this as a B2B marketer myself. Direct mail, sales calls, LinkedIn sales spam, all of these things have got diminishing returns. Prospective clients are really hard to get hold of, and it's really hard to get their attention. They're overloaded with content and also stuff from you and your competition. And they're much more selective these days about the virtual events and the in-person events that they attend. So CBM actually provides this solution. Create a community, ensure that your prospects and your customers value it. They value the peers, the expertise and the experience enough to come back time and time again. And when it's time to, as I said before, choose a new supplier, a new agency, a new technology, you're going to be actively considered because you've given them value over a long period of time. Quite simple, isn't it? Now, actually, what I would say is technology brands and SaaS brands have quite a mature focus on community. As well as buying them, they are creating them as well. They run developer communities, and they create these high-value, high-touch, concierge-type customer communities. And they create support communities and also support all other go-to-market strategies. And locking in customers, increasing loyalty and creating reputational moats is a key driver for them in terms of using communities. And examples of this include the likes of Brandwatch, Talkwalker, and Happiness Index on Guild. So let's see who's doing CBM. So it's not just theory, and let's have a look at some of the value that they're generating. Now, the challenge that we have is we've got lots of clients on Guild who are generating lots of value. Some of them are quite happy to talk about that publicly, others aren't. So here are some examples of those who are. Nest is a performance marketing agency, and they see community as a core element of their sales and lead generation strategy, putting together current clients and prospects into their e-commerce marketing exchange community of practice. Another channel marketing specialist is Sherpa. Now, they have a very niche client base, but their community is generating new business and helping to retain existing clients. Publishers, media, but pretty much all B2B sectors, whether that's professional services, logistics, construction, technology, etc., can all see the benefits and the value of developing communities aligned with their marketing, their content, their events as a channel for prospecting, customer acquisition, loyalty, and advocacy. And what we're seeing is particularly membership organisations. On Guild, for example, the CIPD, the PRCA, the IPIA, etc., are using Guild communities and community-based marketing to generate value, to lock in their members, and to use insight for their communities to drive their events, to create new training modules, to lobby on behalf of their members, and also for other activity as well. So here are some examples of return on investment. An advisory business on Guild has generated £10,000 worth of consultancy as a sole consultant over the last few months, and they're nurturing more leads within their community. Now, by their admission, they're just at the start of their community journey. But again, they value it enough to spend their fee earning time, hosting and building the community, and they're getting a steady flow of leads. I talked about Bow and Crags, and you can see here in terms of lead generation, they're happy to share their successes. But essentially, it's really important for them because they also have a subscription business and they have 100% client retention, stating that their Guild community is a huge contributor to this. And actually at Guild, we practice what we preach. We have marketing objectives that are aligned to the communities that we create because actually we spend lots of time and effort and focus on them. We had a Guild Community Summit event in May, and it was in person and it was ticketed. At the time, the Guild Community Collective for community professionals was 571 members ahead of the event. And actually 12% of the members on that community bought tickets to the event. And we're also tracking over a period of time the impact of those people who join those communities on leads and sales, whether they become prospects and also ultimately customers. So finally, what are the key success factors in building communities? Hopefully you're starting to get excited about CBM and the proposition, but actually building communities like building brands doesn't happen overnight. So I'm going to give you some real, kind of takeaways and tips here. Whatever blend of communities you have, they have to align to your business goals, whether that's revenue, profit, generating partnerships, marketing, product support, recruitment, and retention. You need to be clear about what your community is for, and it needs to have a why and a purpose. And that's really important. It's a bit like sort of running an event and then, not actually stating what the event is for and also what the purpose of the event is. So we've got a handy mnemonic called potato, and that can help you here. The why should also be distilled into an external form for potential members ahead of joining. So an example here is the Media Entrepreneur Meetup's community purpose, which is to share learnings, insights, and contacts between founders and CEOs of B2B subscriptions, media, and events business. So pretty Ron Seal, it does what it says on the tin, but a lot of people just don't communicate that purpose and really understand the why. The next tip is that people are much more important than technology. The best communities have the best community hosts or managers, and they are brilliant people. They do all of these things that I've highlighted here and much more besides. The Marketing Society community is hosted by a member engagement specialist within the organisation and occasionally the CEO, Sophie Devonshire. And Dan Holden here, who hosts the CIPR inside community, is a natural connector and also moderator. A bit like social media, handing your community over to a junior person is a recipe for failure. It's not hard to do community management, but some people more than others have the skills required in bucket loads. So again, figure out what those skills are, and we've got lots of guides on the Guild blog. Now, I always get asked, what's the critical mass for my community? And actually the answer is, it depends. How big should it be? Well, size isn't everything, but what you are trying to achieve is. For example, the right size of your community might only be 20 executive advisors or 10 investors, or it could be 500 client prospects in a thought leadership community. Customer communities can be small and concierge. Again, a big tech brand that I can't name runs a concierge community of their top 50 global clients on Guild. And they've got lower tier customer support communities in the hundreds on other customer support platforms. Platform choice is important, and few community platforms were built to be mobile first. And this is actually one of the real benefits of Guild. One of our key design pillars is that it has to be mobile first, given the ubiquity of mobile devices. So lots of people go, oh, I want a forum, I want it connected to my website. Actually, the reality is most of your community members will want it on something that they carry around with you, with them. You also need to consider things like integrations with your current tech stack, your current MarTech stack, and also data as well. So that's something that's really, really important. Does it align to your CRM system, for example? Smaller groups and communities suit platforms like Guild that have chat and messaging as well, because of the simplicity and also the intimacy. But when your communities get really large, in the tens of thousands, you might need to look at other types of platforms. Again, here's another useful post on platform considerations if you're actually at that stage of your decision making. A huge success factor is time. Communities are not campaigns. They aren't a short-term fix. They take time to create, but they do create genuine value. Now, if you've ever been a member of a community starting up, or if you've started a community yourself, you know that it takes months and not weeks to warm up, to generate trust, to get discussions going, and to get engagement. And we see people give up way, way too early, or expect instant results, or it's frizzled out because a particular person has left the community, or the community manager just hasn't been given time or space to nurture the community as well. So to end, I'm going to leave you with top 10 tips for community success. The first is to have a clear stated purpose. The next is to create community guidelines to set expectations for every single member who joins. A community manager role is very important, as important as the technology that you choose to run your community on. Most people think they need a ton of content to power a community. That's just not true. You don't need to overwhelm people. What we've learned from social media, which is a bad learning thing, is that actually you don't have to post daily. You don't have to post every week, for example, but you have to have a regular cadence of content and discussions within a community. An event is not a community. It's a manifestation of the underlying community, and you must think about how you align events to your community, but an event itself is just not a community. Don't expect people will just get chatting and networking if you give them a community platform. You do have to actively manage a community, onboard people, and actually give them some signposts and some starters. And you're going to have to continue to nurture that for some time. When you're starting a community, my advice is always to go for a single big community or very few groups. You can then start to specialize and create groups and communities that are smaller later on. Low quality engagement is a trap. Again, that's something that we've kind of learned from social media. Not have to beat an algorithm in social media, in community. So, actually make sure that conversations are high quality from the very start. The one thing I want to say here, and this is really important, you'll never get 100% engagement within a community. In fact, in most communities, and particularly on the Guild platform, 25% is around about an average, which is a really high average to achieve. And if you look at Slack and if you look at Discord, for example, the engagement rates will be even lower. And active engagement is not the most important metric in your community, because the majority of people, as they would in an event, will be just taking things from the community. They'll be reading, and then you should never use that word lurker. And finally, community and building communities is really rewarding, and it can bring you lots of value to your organization. But it is hard when people leave your community. It feels a bit personal, for example. It takes time to succeed, and also takes a lot of energy and emotional effort as well. But keep going. And again, there are lots of community builders out there who can get you back and also help you and support you, Lisa being one of those as well. I'm leaving you with a link to some of the community strategy resources. Go to the Guild blog, guild.co/blog, and look on the tag community strategy. We publish something broadly every week that will help with your community strategy. And also do connect with me. Connect with me on Guild. There's the QR code. So if you've not gone on to Guild, then try it, and I can give you some example groups and communities that you might want to go and join. But also I'm open to questions now, and also at any time if you want to connect with me on Guild. So thank you very much. Back to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Michelle. That was fantastic as always. We will take questions if anybody has them. So if you'd like to put them in the Q&A or the chat, we can take those. Otherwise, I've got Michelle here now, and I'm going to ask her lots of questions.
No pressure.
And obviously, I've been on Guild for some time now, and I have to say, as well as giving information, I'm definitely a taker. There are so many good groups on there where you can, as a marketeer myself, if I'm stuck or I need a speaker or need some help and advice, I know one of those groups are going to help me out. And there are some amazing people on there who are always willing to help. So I would definitely push people to join. It doesn't cost anything. There are lots of free groups. And the Circle Society and Marketing Leaders Circle have a group, once you're a member, that you can connect with as well. Plug over. Quick question from me on community. I know, and I've seen case studies where corporate organisations actually use building of their communities to help bring their customers together and get information and feedback from them to help with their R&D.
Yep.
I know you've got some examples of that. Are you able just to talk us through that one a little bit more?
Yeah, you know, I've worked in technology for a while, and actually it's really common to have these things. Some people call them product councils, or, you know, kind of co-development teams or whatever else, but it's a really brilliant way of essentially not just bringing in your customers, but retaining your customers. And as you say, using the people that care the most about insights and development. And, you know, I'm not going to speak on behalf of product managers out there, but certainly from Guild's perspective, we really, really value our customer communities, and you know, we actively work with them in order to be able to get them to beta test some features, for example, but also to ask them, you know, what would you like to see and why? And I think that's the most important thing. It's not just, you know, using it as an opportunity for people to say, oh, I want this and you haven't rolled this out and XYZ platform has got this. I think the best way of, you know, kind of creating communities around product and customer innovation, etc., is to actually challenge your clients and to say, okay, well, if you were having to invest, you know, 6 months of developer time on this, which one would you prioritize and why? So I think you can have fabulous relationships with your customers who actually, you know, when you just think about, you know, B2B marketing, they often can be the biggest, you know, referrers of prospects and new customers and lead generators themselves. So I think it's a bit of a, you know, a no-brainer to not just create customer communities, but also the innovation type communities as well. I think that's a great idea. I mean, you know, people like Adobe do, my previous organization did, Guild do. So there's no shortage of examples out there. I think the thing is, you probably never see them in the public domain because obviously there's R&D and lots of kind of secret sauce going on in them, but they do exist. And I would say across the majority of technology companies.
And in terms of building a community, obviously digital is one of those ways, and it's what Guild specialise in. The Guild app isn't just about messages backwards and forwards, is it? There's other functionality to bring people together. So I didn't know if you could just touch on some of those things as well.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in fact, earlier today, and I was only on it for a very short period of time, we've got a community on Guild called the Guild Community Collective, which I showed you earlier. I think it's got nearly 900 members now, but every couple of weeks on a Thursday at 1 o'clock, we have a meetup in the community. So Guild has a feature called video rooms, and essentially you just slide the video room across. We integrate some technology called Whereby, and it allows the community and as many people as possible within the community to meet up and discuss specific topics. So today we were talking about the role of volunteers in community. I think we've got one coming up that will feature journalists and their role in community. And we've had things like governance and self-care. We've had alignment to marketers. So we run these 45-minute sort of lunchtime sessions every couple of weeks using the video room. And lots of other communities do the same thing. So I work with a PR school called Socially Mobile. They've just invited their second cohort to join their first cohort in an alumni community. And the way that they did that was to open up the video room and ask the alumni, those people who did the very first of the schools, the first cohort, to welcome in the second one. So that's an example of doing it. But there's lots of ways of engaging through community. So a really good example of this is on the Creo community on Guild, which is for event professionals. I think there's about 2,000 of them. At the start of the pandemic, everybody was going, oh, what do we do? So actually what we did as a collection of people who specialised in putting on events, etc., was to create a guide around how to, get your insurance back, how to best put on a virtual event, reviews around event technology, etc. So that was a co-created Google Doc by the community as well. So there are so many different ways that you can get your community to engage. But the important thing that a lot of people miss is that it's not just doing it online. Also, it's really important to get people in person when you can as well. And then from those events, say we can continue those conversations in the community afterwards. So, again, it's just about thinking about your online community being the glue, the center of everything, but actually, it's something that people can come back to. But the important thing is to make sure that everything that you do in person also pulls people back to the community as well. So normally when I do these sessions, I'll have like a community up and say, let's continue the conversation in this community. And it just becomes sort of, second nature after a while.
Yeah, as you said earlier, community and digital community really took off during COVID, but it's really great to see now that, those digital conversations are still being had, but people are actually being able to meet face to face and look each other in the eye. And Michelle, I didn't know you before COVID, and Guild brought us together and having conversations on that platform. And it's just great now that, you build a network, don't you, of people that are like you, that can support you in your career and your roles, or potentially support you to develop your own products and services.
Yeah, that's true. And just picking up on something you said about being a giver, actually you're very generous on the Guild platform in various groups and communities. I think that what I see in LinkedIn particularly is that people want to connect with you and then they're selling straight away. Actually, I just kind of put my wall up immediately, because actually I think that you sell automatically if you are helpful. So even if you don't create your own community, if you are helpful in other communities, people will go, where does that person work? And then actually you'll start to get referrals from your business as well, because you're seen as being somebody who is generous and helpful as well. And when you put the credits in and when you help people, either through communities or social media, you kind of bank that. So when you do, as you say, need to go, oh God, I need a speaker, a replacement speaker, or would you mind giving me some insight for XYZ report? Or does anybody have a connection to XYZ person at any company? Then it's okay to ask, because you've put in the hard work and you've developed kind of credits as well. So I think it really pays to be very generous, not just in communities, but also social media as well.
Absolutely. Michelle, thank you for joining us today. We have recorded the session, so it will be available on our website afterwards. There's some great information there. And as Michelle said, there's the QR code to connect. And I know, Michelle, you'll give as much advice as people need on building a community.
Oh yeah, happy to help. As I say, it's not just the stuff that I write, but I think more importantly, every community is unique. So I'm always really interested in the dynamics of community. And so if you've struggled to get started, I'm happy to help. If you want to get started and don't know where to start, happy to help. If you've got stuff that you can teach me, brilliant. I'm always learning.
Excellent. Michelle, thank you. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.